Happy Monday, everybody. It's time for another edition of Ask Mike. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin here. And Mike, I have to say this. I said like and subscribe at the beginning of the last video. That was the most liked Ask Mike that we've had since we started this show. So great job, guys. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. And recheck that subscribe button because a lot of people told me that they were subscribed and then they got unsubscribed. So recheck it. If you think you're subscribed, just check it again for me. And if you aren't subscribed, why aren't you subscribed to us? You watch our videos. Subscribe. Okay, let's jump into the question, shall we, Mike? Our first question is from Hog Redneck, who wants to know, we're into the first week of football practice. How do the guys look?
Okay, yeah, it's a very complex thing, and we've talked over and over about there's so many things you don't see without blocking and full speed tackling and all that. So typically what you do is you get to look at how well the quarterbacks throw the ball, how well the receivers do at getting open, catching the ball, and what does the D-back, what do the defensive backs look like? What I can tell you is that in years in which Arkansas has struggled, generally there's an imbalance. Either the defense dominates or the offense dominates. You don't want that. I've had people that cover other programs like Alabama and Georgia tell me that usually in this period you get a good mix. And that's what we've seen, so that's encouraging. I think Taylon Green has improved his accuracy. He's more consistent. That doesn't mean he hasn't thrown some picks. He has. But the ones I've seen, most of them are really good plays by the secondary. We've seen some pass breakups. We've seen some picks. And, I mean, let's look. There's some real depth here. First of all, I'm just going to mention Tyrone Broden, Andrew Armstrong, Isaac Tesla, Jordan Anthony, Bryce Stevens, Desmond James, Monty Harrison. And that's just a few of the receivers that have all at one time or another, I went out and checked names off the roster when somebody did something impressive. But then you look at the secondary, and you got Keon Stewart, T.J. Metcalf, Jalen Braxton, Akari Johnson, Jaheim Singletary, and an old man in the group, Hudson Clark, and there's more. What happened in the offseason is they went out. I was just listening to Travis Woodson talk about what they did in between seasons in the portal.
You mean Marcus Woodson? Okay.
I got
I was like, wait, what?
Marcus Woodson.
Okay.
And what they did in the portal, and he said we were trying to do two things. We were trying to add depth, which they did, and then we were just trying to make sure we got as many of those people in for the spring football because it makes a difference when they don't have to come in here and learn everything fresh in the fall. So he said, we're in much better shape than we were a year ago. We have better depth, but they've added talent. I mean, there's better speed back there. There's better jumping ability. They've got some size back there. They've got some guys that can move back and forth between linebacker and cornerback or jump around in the secondary. So they've got genuine depth back there. So that's what I've seen so far is just some really noticeable difference when they do these 7-on-7 and 11-on-11 drills. And
we've been looking at some of the other position groups as well. You've talked about the offensive line before, and we talked about how they looked in spring and in spring ball. You think they've improved too, right?
Well, yeah, it's just hard. All you're doing there is looking at the kind of their physicality and what kind of shape they're in. You just, until they go full speed, I hesitate to talk about that a lot.
I know you do. It's the same with like linebackers with all those new guys, new faces in that room. That's an area that we've been looking at. I said on social media the other day, though, because I covered Xavier Sori in high school. I was the sports director in Panama City before this job, and he was at a high school over there before he left and went to IMG called Graceville. And so I got to cover him there. And I looked at a video that I think Jacob posted on our social media, and I went, I don't recognize the guy. I mean, he is 3 times the size that he was when I covered him. And he was still big in high school, don't get me wrong. So I think there's some good sparks in different position groups. Again, I do want to say really quickly, we don't get to see a lot of practice. We still don't get to see.
More so than last year or maybe the year before, but still not a lot.
Still not a lot. Still only about, what, 6 periods? I haven't been, so it's been about 6 periods.
At least one was 7. So.
Oh, okay, all right. They're improving. Maybe they're getting a little more lenient with the media here. H.L. McCamish says, I've watched the various football workout clips on X and Facebook. I like what I see. Is Coach letting you guys shoot more so far? Seems like he's letting us see more than last year. I got ahead of myself there.
Yeah,
sorry,
you did.
Mike.
That's all right. 7 periods that first day. And usually what happens is at least 1 or 2 of those periods they say you can't shoot. So we can't shoot video.
But you can watch.
But you can watch. I haven't seen any of that so far. So we have been able to show more, and I like it. And I think the reason he's doing that is he knows he's got to win these fans back over. And you do that, and we saw it last spring. Remember the 2 scrimmages he let everybody go to? That's unheard of.
I was like, wow.
I don't remember a coach ever letting fans go into a preseason scrimmage, but he did. I think he's still doing that. I think he wants people to see these guys, and he wants to dispel the notion that this is the same team as last year, because it's not.
I still had someone ask me on social media, though, well, do you think he'll open the practices at all this fall? And I was like, no. I mean, practices aren't open to the public.
Nobody does that.
But nobody does that. That's what I
Frank
said.
Broyles opened it to the media, but never the fans.
Yeah, and so they were like, oh, well, we opened it up to, and I said, no, it's not going to be open.
That's never been done.
Yeah, exactly. So, again, if you're a fan that wants to go, you won't be able to go to those, but you can be excited for the start of the season. KY Hogg says, why do they call it fall camp? And what is the most overlooked part of fall camp?
That's interesting. Fall, first of all, it's really summer, so that is kind of stupid. The only thing I can figure out is you say fall to distinguish from things they did in the summer.
Yeah, like
now,
summer conditioning.
Where does the term camp come from? That comes from going all the way back to when coaches used to take their players off campus, even in high school, take them away from and put them in dorms or whatever. And all you did for a whole 2 weeks was eat, sleep, and do football. Everybody was together. It's supposed to promote camaraderie. If you saw that movie, Remember the Titans, that's what they did in that movie. And if you're old like me, you might remember the Junction City Boys, where Bear Bryant, when he was at A&M, took them to Junction City, and they did all this stuff in 2 weeks and then became a great team. So that's where camp comes from. This is not a camp. The camp now, all that does is designate they're not going to class right now. And in fact, they were. So camp was a little bit misleading this year. They still had some guys going to summer school this first week, which is why they went in the afternoons. Now they're back into going to the mornings. You can do mornings when you're not going to class.
Yeah.
And then and so they'll do that for a while, but then when school starts, camp is over, and you're back into what's called normal game week mode, which is they like to have 2 weeks where you're kind of doing it like you do during the season, where you get up, go to class, come over, work out, and then go study at night. So there'll be less than 2 weeks of camp, and then a full 2 weeks before the season starts of kind of game week mode.
And I was telling some fans too, they started a little bit earlier as well because the game was moved up to Thursday night, that first game of the season. So,
what's the most overlooked part? I would say what you do to get into that position, the summer conditioning. Because if you don't arrive in the proper condition, you will spend the rest of the year trying to catch up. I don't think you ever will. And that's significant only because Ben Souders did an interview, I think on Friday maybe, where he said that he's done this for 16 years, not obviously at Arkansas for 16 years, but he said he's never had a group work this hard over the summer. He gave credit to most of the upperclassmen. He talked about Landon Jackson's numbers being off the chart in terms of these things that you get tested on at the NFL Combine, the broad jump, the vertical jump, the lifting and all that stuff. He said he's going to be ready to make some money come the NFL Combine because of his numbers he's going to have. And he said a lot of them have done this. So it looks like they've done everything they needed to do. And we haven't seen guys dropping out because of the heat or injuries or things like that would come from cramps or things being out of shape.
Yeah, Sam Pittman said they had a few cramps on that day one, and that's why they had to move the last 30 minutes inside.
It was very hot out there.
But it was blazing. I was impressed that they stayed out there as long as they did. I mean, that was impressive and definitely owed to the conditioning
and
there.
Even when they went inside some, they would come back outside. He didn't want them in totally in the air conditioning.
Absolutely. So. I think that speaks to that summer conditioning and what you were talking about there. That full interview with Ben Souders is on our YouTube page if you want to listen to it. He talks about guys getting faster as well. The Hawk Hawkins. I have not heard that name before, the Hawk Hawkins.
He's asked questions before, it's just been a while.
Okay, it's been a while. I love the name. Got any idea if Pitt will let these guys do full speed tackling before the first game? It's a risk, but I say you got to take a chance. Touch football, don't work.
They're obviously not in full pads yet. I'm not sure when it will happen. Maybe later this week.
It's on our schedule thing. I think it is later this week.
It should be later this week. So once they're in full pads, I'm sure he's going to get asked that question. If you will remember, he had said his first couple of years here he didn't like doing that. He talked a lot about what he calls thudding, where you thud up and pretend to tackle. And he said you can learn as much from that and don't risk injury. But last year he went and they had some full speed tackling. He said felt like they had to do it. I can't believe he would go away from that this year. So I'm expecting to see it again. I mean, this is important. He needs to have these guys ready to play.
Yeah, I think it is Wednesday. I mean, I'll have to look at our schedule, but I think you're right. It is Wednesday.
I don't think there's any I don't think thudding may be an okay thing, but there's no substitute for tackling. You got to tackle. Yeah. You're going to have to tackle in a game. And you've ever seen a team that didn't, and I've seen some at Arkansas where they didn't tackle, they look terrible early in the year especially.
Well, like you said, he's given us no reason to believe that they're not going to do that. So I guess we'll find out later this week and go back to that question if we need to. Lanny asks, did you see where Petrino kicked a receiver off the field for not finishing a play after the catch? The old Petrino would have probably done more than that, but it's nice to see that he still doesn't put up with a halfway effort from his players.
You know, what was interesting was the reaction on Facebook, I think, where I was reading from some former players. Oh. And first of all, the first comments were like, I thought you guys told us that Petrino had changed. Look, he kicked the guy off the field. And these players were like, hey, bub, you obviously weren't around when he was here as head coach. He would have done a lot more than kick the guy off the field. And I agree, he would have ran over, cussed him off the field, and chased him back into the Broyles Center. I think that incident was more proof that he's different. He still got the point across. He kicked the guy off the field. You're out of this drill for now. You can't just drop the ball as soon as you catch it and walk off. You got to run, finish the play. So I don't know how much after that he got back in. I assume he's not still banished, but. You see the point. He made his point without cussing, screaming. Yeah. He yelled at him. Yeah. He yelled at him, but it wasn't the old Petrino. You could hear Petrino, from a mile away the old way. So he's different. I mean, I've had people tell me they've heard him cuss a few times out there, but not much.
A coach once told me, and I think it was my dad, so I'm going to be totally honest with you here, but he told me that there's a difference between being a mean coach and being a tough coach, right? A tough coach means you yell, you can be mad, but you're not mean about it, right? Mm-hmm. There's a difference between the two, and I think that's where some of the former players come in and say, well, it's not that he's not tough on the guys. I think that's what fans think. No, he's not tough anymore. No. He is tough on the guys. He's just maybe not as mean as he was back then, you know? Get it. Exactly. Eddie Lynn says there's a video on the internet that's gone viral showing a youth football coach cussing in front of his players. Everybody seems to agree the guy should be fired. You're old school. Did coaches in your day get fired just for cussing?
I don't know if you've seen that video.
I have not.
It's over the top. Now, Eddie Lynn, I've said this before, is one of my best friends. Yeah. We played football together, junior high. He's doing that because he knows. He wants to see what I say.
He knows that you know that he knows the answer.
He wants me to talk about Coach Vanoy. But Vanoy was never like that. Now, Vanoy would cuss at you some. The problem with that video is those look like to me youth football players, maybe pre-junior high. I don't know for sure, it wasn't explained. I think it's really inappropriate to do around it, but he was over the top. He was MFing and doing a lot of crazy stuff. What Vanoy would do is, and we always noticed this, we didn't dare laugh, but we noticed about it later, is that whenever he was really chewing on somebody bad, he would always throw a joke in at the end. And like there was this one kid, Billy Bob Freeland. Billy Bob was a good guy, but he had this nervous habit. If he was upset about something, his eyes would start to flutter. It was just a nervous thing.
Like twitch?
Well, they would just flutter like he's blinking.
Oh, okay, like
constant, a lot. Blinking a lot. And so, again, offensive linemen do so much pass blocking these days that they get down in that crouch with their butts kind of hanging down. You've seen that. That was an absolute no-no in 1960 when we were playing junior, because we didn't throw the ball and you had to be leaning forward in your stance. You wanted your butt up behind you so that you could move forward and block. So Billy Bob was doing one of those, looked like his butt was hanging down. Today it would be perfect form for an offensive lineman, but not then. And Vanoy comes up to him and he goes, yeah, Billy Bob, you look like you're squatting behind the barn, blah, blah, blah. And he just starts cussing at him, And Billy Bob is just, his eyeballs are just fluttering.
Oh, no.
And he goes, Billy Bob, stop that. You look like a frog in a hailstorm. And then we wanted to laugh, but nobody did. But we did when the practice was over. So He would do stuff like that, but he also did some things kind of, you know, you didn't just think he was the meanest guy that ever lived.
A frog in a hailstorm?
You can imagine a frog with big eyes and the hail's coming down, hitting him in the eye.
That is the funniest thing I have heard today, Mike. I'm going to use that. A frog, you look like a frog in a hailstorm. That's great. Yeah, definitely not mean, but definitely tough. Like that's.
Well, I didn't like him at the time. I think we started to appreciate him a little more after he was gone because we were pretty good that year. The next year we got another coach and they ain't great and we didn't win any games. So then you start, and that coach was he ended up being a good high school coach, but he was a good position coach. There's a difference in being in charge of the whole team and being able to coach a position. And he was a good position coach. He just wasn't a good head coach. And the next year we kind of weren't very good.
Oh, well, that's not good, but there you go. That shows how much it matters to have a good head coach.
Or at least a mean one, right?
Or at least a mean one, yeah. Razor Alex 88 says, recruiting for the future class is looking good despite the deafening noise that went/going on surrounding Coach Pittman's job security. I'm sipping the Kool-Aid from a shot glass right now, hoping for a better season than 2023.
Well, it is looking better. I just remember a few months, maybe a month or so ago, remember when Arkansas lost the #1 player in the state to OU, and then they lost a guy to Missouri?
Yes,
and all these guys were talking about Missouri's out recruiting us, Oklahoma's out recruiting us, everybody's stealing our players. And that's turned around. They've got, I think in the last week, Arkansas got a commitment from the #1 player in Oklahoma for 2026. It's not this upcoming class, but 2 years from now. And then maybe a top 5 guy from next year. So they're starting to recruit Oklahoma well. Missouri went after a running back at Parkview, I think.
Okay.
And it was between Arkansas and Missouri there, and Arkansas got him, so Drinkowitz didn't get him.
There you go.
So that's looking better. Here's what I think about recruiting, because people were using that oh, Pittman's got to go. It's a disaster. He can't recruit.
Yeah.
And I kept saying, look, until they sign in December, you're not going to know squat.
Yeah.
If this team is better than everybody thinks it is, and I think it will be, then I think recruiting improves even more. So the whole key right now is to do as good a job as you can recruiting, and I think they have. I think what's happened here is a lot of these kids have come in here, seen the environment. They've been talked to by other portal kids, especially that have come in here that are new and said, hey, you really like it here? There's a lot going on. They like the facilities, they like the Northwest Arkansas, like the people in the athletic department, like the school. These are reasons why you go to a school, and they're giving NIL money too. So I think all other things being equal, the recruiting is improving as we get further away from last season, and they have more of an ability to say, that's not us right now. This right here is what you see. This is what we are now.
You know what I think is really interesting, Mike, about the whole talk about future classes and recruiting and Coach Pittman as well, is that a lot of these recruits, if you go and you read their quotes, because Otis Kirk does a great job with that on hogville.net, and he goes and talks to these recruits, and he asks them a whole plethora of questions, but they find a way to bring up Coach Pittman, even if the question's not necessarily about Coach Pittman, they find a way to bring him up and say, I really love Coach Pittman. He's a great head coach. Like, they like Coach Pittman. And so, to me, it's like with all of these things going around about, oh, we don't know if he's, he could be fired and all this stuff, it's kind of interesting to see that they're still going, yeah, we have faith in him, that we like him as a head coach.
First of all, the average fan that's out there mad, that wanted him gone, they don't know anything about his relationship with players. Now, there were some guys last year that gave up. They were. And we've talked about the reasons for that. And Sam Pittman has accepted some of the responsibility for that, the imbalance on NIL. He admitted, I was behind on the whole NIL thing. He's not anymore.
Nope.
He went out and he made one really bad mistake, hired the wrong guy for offensive coordinator, but he bounced back and hired maybe the best guy.
Yeah.
So what I look at when somebody has made mistakes and has a problem, what do? You can just quit. He could have just said, okay, I'm stupid, I'm gone. I'm not head coach material. He could have said that. He didn't. So if you're going to stay, what do? How do you bounce back from that? And you have to, if you do what I do, you have to go out and watch what they do. And I've watched everything he's done since then, and he's convinced me. Now, the ultimate convincing has to be when you play games. But right now, I just think the average fan is out there. They think these people that are complaining don't see any difference. They think that the team's the same. They're not acknowledging Petrino at all, like they don't even remember what he was like as an offensive coordinator, just like the offense that he put on the field, which was pure genius. and there are all kinds of signs that he's going to do it again. I mean, he's doing things that they haven't even shown us yet. They've kind of talked about it.
Yeah.
With the tight ends, they're going to use tight ends as fullbacks in some of these. They're not going to do that all the time, but they can suddenly line up a tight end as a fullback to run as a blocker behind one of their running backs.
And last week we talked about the power eye, them reviving the power eye, and we said we hadn't seen that, but I actually was sent the interview where Sam Pittman said that in there. So there you go, guys. That is a correction of last week. So
I mean, he's made changes, and I think they'll work.
Yeah. Hey, it remains to be seen, but you like what you are seeing right now.
Exactly.
That's why we say that, okay, guys? We're not trying to just be all Kool-Aid drinkers over here, okay? All right, Hog wants to know, do we even know who and when we play in 2025? Seems we used to know our football schedule years in advance.
The 2025, the full schedule won't be out until probably around December. The reason they don't do these schedules long-term anymore is because there's too many things going on in college football. I mean, who knew 2 years ago that the SEC was going to look like this? Now they're sitting there talking about, okay, we have an 8-game SEC schedule, but maybe we're going to go to a 9-game schedule. We don't even know for sure what's going to happen next year on that. We think there'll be 8 teams, and then probably in 2026 they'll go, if they're going to go to 9, they'll go to 9. What we're pretty sure of is that if you take the SEC schedule that they played last year, you're going to take that and just, it's going to be the same teams.
Yeah, that was announced, so yes, that is.
You're going to play the same teams. You're just going to reverse where they're played.
Correct.
So, for instance, if you play Texas here this year, you're going to be playing Texas and Austin next year, and all of that. I think this is the last year you play A&M at A&M.
Yeah.
And then I think they may have to go back to A&M, do they, or do they come up here? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think they haven't decided it just yet. I don't think they have that set, but I believe that it's over now being at a neutral site, right? This will be the last year. Am I right on that?
That's right,
I
think so. So what we don't know are the non-conference games for sure, but that's the only thing we don't know. But the reason they don't do these things in advance as far as they used to is because, again, there's just stuff. Well, what if they go to this super division we talked about? Then they could reorganize everything. You just don't want to commit until you know for sure.
We just don't know what the future will look like, and I think everyone's kind of in a holding pattern right now of like, what does the schedule look like 2026 and beyond? They at least know a kind of idea of what 2025 looks like you said, flipping the same opponents, but just flipping where they're played for 2025.
Do you recall if the order that is going to be the same? Because I didn't look at this.
I don't think they've decided the dates yet.
Yeah. They could flip that around.
They could. They know the opponents. They just haven't announced any dates or anything. And I believe Jacob, right, Notre Dame is on that 2025? Notre Dame. So there you go. You do know a non-conference opponent in Notre Dame.
Sam Pittman ever going to get a break? If I'm the athletic director up there right now, every non-conference game is with a low mid-major.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to get 4 wins no matter what.
Listen, I mean, if he can do something with the tough schedules that he's given year in and year out, I mean, I love it. SEC Media Days where, Jacob's waving. Oh, Memphis and Arkansas State. There you go. He's looking it up. There you go.
So see, we almost have the schedule. There's
almost, yeah.
Two.
You just don't know the days of the SEC.
That's what I said. I was like, we don't know the days of the SEC games, but we have a semblance of a schedule there in 2025. So thank you, Jacob, for looking up that schedule, Memphis and Arkansas State as well. But I like what Sam said at Media Days when they were asked about how tough the schedule was, and he kind of said, well, it was a little easier than normal, right? I love that. That was talking about this year's schedule. Whippersnapper asks, if there was an expanded playoff to 16 or more teams, could we see the BCS level of football go back to an 11-game regular season? I personally don't believe college football players should be asked to play more than 16 games in a season.
You know, at one time I would have agreed with that, but here's why I don't agree with that anymore. You can't have it both ways. If you're going to pay players, if they in effect are going to become professional players, which is what's happened, and especially if they end up becoming employees of the university, there's no telling how much money that's going to cost. I mean, as much as $30 million in addition to their budget. If you're going to cause the athletic department to have to cough up that money, guess what? They're going to have to be able to generate it. This is the way this stuff works. It reminds me of when everybody pressured McDonald's, oh, you need to pay more, so McDonald's agreed to pay $15 an hour to all of its workers. And then guess what happened?
Yeah.
It costs more.
Yeah.
I pay about double what I did 3 or 4 years ago at
yeah.
McDonald's. I stopped going. But that's what happens. If you're run a business, and that's what the athletic department at schools are, it's a business, you got to generate this money. So if you're going to come in there and say, we want a bunch of money, you're going to play more games because that generates more money.
Yes.
And yes, you might not go to the playoffs, and there might be a team that played 4 playoff games, but the revenue gets split from every team in that conference gets a chunk of that. They don't just give the money to the teams that are in the playoffs. They split the revenues. So you play however many games you have to play, and if you don't want to do that, then go back and petition the courts and say we're being taken advantage of. We don't want to play these games, and we want to go back to the old days where we didn't get any money.
But they're getting paid now. That's why they can get away with doing that.
And that's why they're not going to complain.
Exactly, because they're getting money to do it, and they like playing the game. I mean, that's why you do it, right? You do play the game, and they enjoy. I think if you polled players, they would rather play more games than play less games.
Yeah,
so
I would rather play more games and less practice.
There you go, exactly. WV Hog Fan says, I'm in my 60s and I'm ready to suit up and play my best after watching Coach Cal's press conference. Me too. I get you there. What effect, if any, will Coach Cal's recruiting, success, philosophy, and enthusiasm will have on the entire athletic program?
Yeah, he's so high profile everywhere he goes that he's like a PR machine for the whole athletic department. And what he's saying every time you see him, looking at him, what's being suggested is, hey, Arkansas went out and got that guy. They took him from Kentucky. Maybe Kentucky just said, okay, you can have him. If so, they're stupid. But you took him. And he could have gone anywhere else probably, or a lot of other places. So how did Arkansas get him? Oh, well, they must be a pretty good school. Then what happens is it starts to affect recruiting. You start to have, even if it's another sport, baseball, football, whatever, or basketball. Baseball, football, or track, or any of those tracks already does what it does. But at other sports, I think it has some effect on recruiting. But I think the real difference may end up being, now, first of all, he's got to win here. And let's see what happens if he wins 2 or 3 years here and wins big with the recruits he's got. Then I think what that does is it tells other coaches when a job is open here, maybe I ought to look into that. They must have paid him top dollar. And why did he go there? That must be a good school to be at.
Have you seen the stat where if your school wins one of the big 3, like football, basketball, baseball, a national championship, how it ups the attendance the next year, so the years to come? I mean, it even helps the school. I mean, it has such an effect.
There's an overall
on everything. Effect. So
it's an inside effect, an outside effect. I think that's going to turn out to be one of the biggest hires that was ever made at Arkansas.
Listen, it got a lot of press, I'll tell you that. I mean, his press conference the other day, it's just a routine press conference. And you had ESPN on that press conference, on the Zoom and other.
And I thought it was really interesting, the stuff he said. Trevin Brazil, when he talked about how that he must have at some point said, I don't think you're very good, because he said at one point, he looked at Brazil, who was down on the floor, and he says, you're better than I thought you were. And he said, I told you.
I told you.
So he must have said he didn't think he was very good.
Yeah.
But, it's just all these things that he's talking about, this whole business, which could apply to any sport, anywhere, about I want you to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. That is the whole key of being able to play and be successful, because everybody's uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Practice is awful. Games wear you out. But if you can overcome that, then that's how you win. So, I mean, all the stuff he's talking about, and look, I read stuff. I go on Facebook. There was one guy that said he was talking, said he covered Cal when he was at Memphis as a reporter, and said he was a real jerk and all this stuff. You get guys saying stuff like this, but I just don't see it. I don't see him walking around being arrogant or being a jerk.
I want to talk to that reporter, because I have never heard a bad word about him. Genuinely, there's coaches talk, right? And I get to hear a lot of that thanks to my family. But I mean, my dad told me, he's one of the guys that you don't hear a bad word about.
Yeah.
I mean, genuinely, that's the kind of persona he has. Anyways, Mike, we do have to get through these final 2 questions. We're running out of time. S. Giles wants to know, the NCAA is tripling the number of scholarships allowed for college baseball. I would think that Van Horn would be overjoyed, but I read where he's saying it may not be all good. What could be bad about this?
Well, one of the things he talked about is just because it's allowed doesn't mean you would get it. Now, I don't think he really was suggesting that, Hunter Yurachek will say, I'm only going to let you have 3 more scholarships. I assume they'll get it. Here's what I think, and I haven't talked to him.
Okay.
But here's what I'm thinking he was thinking. Okay, You know what that's going to add to the budget, the athletic department budget? Over $1 million to add those scholarships. Where's that money going to come from? Guess where it's going to come from? Ticket sales.
Yep.
Tickets are already, fans are complaining about high ticket sales. Well, wait till they see what happens when this goes on. You can't get stuff like this without a price.
Yeah.
And I think that's just what he's pointing out.
Yeah, and I said that the first moment I read it, I said, people were like, this is great. And I said, I really hope Arkansas allows the full amount because that would be great for Dave Van Horn, but it comes down to money.
They'll allow it, but they're going to
They're
going to expect it to be generated, which means Van Horn, they got to get paid. You can't add more. Haven't added any more seats yet, so you're not going to get it that way. So you got to charge more money for the seats.
Hey, when you guys are complaining about how high ticket prices are, just know you're paying for these extra scholarships.
That's
okay,
right.
That's what you're doing. I'm sure Dave Van Horn will talk about it come closer to next season. We got to end on a fun note, right, Mike?
Yep.
Alyssa in Paris. We're going to show you a really, really cool clip from her today when she was with the Today Show doing something that I didn't think they would do, Mike. Check it out.
So I have one special request. Yes. If you've ever watched an Arkansas Razorback game, they do this thing. They call the Hogs. Will you guys try to call the Hogs with me?
Yeah.
We can. All right, here we go.
Where the mic goes down.
Pig.
Suey. Okay, ready?
One more time.
Pig.
Suey. One more time. Pig. Suey. Razorbacks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shout out to Ryan Krauser.
That's pretty cool. She got him to call the Hogs, Mike. She got him to call the Hogs.
Yeah, I put this on Twitter and Facebook because the first thing that hit me was my memory of Lou Holtz. I think it was after that first good big season here at Arkansas, and he was riding high, and he was on the Tonight Show.
Oh, yeah?
With Johnny Carson, and he got Johnny Carson to wear a hog hat.
It's so great.
And that part of it was great. Everybody was just going, a hog hat. Johnny Carson's wearing a hog hat. And then somehow the subject came up about where's Arkansas. He said, well, it's not the end of the earth, but you can see it from there. And he just destroyed every good piece of PR that he'd just gotten with that hog hat by making that statement. People were just mad at him. Couldn't figure out why he said it. Well, so Alyssa does this, but she doesn't say anything stupid afterward.
No,
it's all still good PR. So Alyssa trumps Lou Holtz.
Oh my gosh! Well, that's a high praise for Alyssa Orange there. She's been doing a great job in Paris, and we've been following her journey. When does she get back? What, next week? I think.
Yeah, I think there's one more week of this, and then she'll be off a week because she got to rest.
That's true. She's got to rest up.
They're going 100 miles an hour over there.
They are. She's been working 12-hour days. So shout out to Alyssa. She's been doing an awesome job bringing us all the coverage there from Paris with all the Arkansas athletes that are over there.
Great Arkansas coverage.
Yeah, I'm sure we will wrap it up once it's done on how great they all did over in Paris. But that's going to do it for this week's Ask Mike. We'll see you next Monday to answer more of your questions.